So Alessia, what got you into advising? How did you start this whole thing?
Well, that's a great question. I feel like what got me into it was something that happened way before I got into it. Meaning, I was 19 years old when my dad had a heart attack, and he was at that time running a business himself, a family business. And because he had a heart attack, because he had to step out of the business, because he had to take care of himself for a whole bunch of reasons, I ended up surprisingly leading the business. Initially, it was supposed to be just for 6 months, and then it kind of extended to a very long time. But I remember in that moment, as I was running a business, I was I had a team to lead. I had partners, I had suppliers, I had meetings, and I really didn't have all the answers myself. And on some levels, although it was very exciting, it was as well very frustrating because I didn't have all the answers. And it was very lonely because I felt like I was supposed to have all the answers and I didn't have them.
This is one of the main things that we hear CEOs say all the time is it's lonely because as a CEO, as a leader, you feel like you have to be strong and always certain and, the visionary, and you can never be like, I don't know what I'm doing. But in fact, many of them don't know what they're doing.
Right.
And advisors are so important in allowing them to discuss through and talk through and reason through things.
Right, and that's exactly what happened to me. At some point, I totally hit a brick wall. I had no idea anymore what to do. Things were not going the way they were supposed to go. I had nobody to actually discuss things through in a really clean way. I mean, I could discuss things with my team, but it's not the same thing. And one of my friends introduced me to a business advisor. And so I remember exactly the first day that he came in, and I felt so much pressure and so much confusion and frustration. And we had an hour and a half meeting. And I remember exactly the moment he left, and I realized that my emotional state was completely different. Nothing had changed in my business yet, but the way I felt was completely different. It was like a weight had been lifted from my chest, and I felt like I could see clearer, I could think better, I could communicate better to my team. I had a renewed inspiration, I had a vision, and that all happened in just 90 minutes together. And really, nothing changed in the business yet, but it was completely different for me. And I remember after I started working with him, and after a few months working with him and having these meetings and feeling like so energized, invigorated, inspired after our meetings, I started to think, this is awesome. I want to do that. I want to be that person for other business owners. I want to be the one that lifts the weight out of their chest. But I was running my business. I kept running it for a few more years until I felt like it was really the right time to kind of jump on the next adventure. And by that time, I was absolutely sure and certain about what I wanted the next chapter of my life to be. And that was being a support system for other businesses, for visionaries, for business leaders that wanted to have that sounding board, that wanted to have that experience brought to them, that wanted to have that different point of view, that different perspective. That's what I wanted to be for somebody else. And that's when I actually transitioned. So again, what got me into that happened years before I actually started, but it was so impactful to work with business advisors on my businesses that it completely changed my life, not just my business, but my life.
What have you noticed about women in advisory, women executives, women on boards? Like, how did that become an interesting thing for you?
So that's an interesting question. One thing that I have definitely noticed is that the loneliness that I was talking about is sometimes even stronger when a woman is actually the CEO. And the reason for that is that very often, like culturally, we feel, just as women, whether that's something that comes from the outside or not, but internally we feel like we need to prove that we actually really deserve to be there. And that makes us feel even more lonely because we actually share even less. We feel even less like to let go of the guard and saying, I don't know what I'm doing. So I feel like as a woman specifically, having business advisors has been incredible, and even more so as the years, in the years I started to have then some women advisors. I have found that that was a whole other level of inspiration, because they weren't just bringing their specific expertise, but they were being a role model as well for me in some ways they were thinking, some ways they were living their lives, some ways they were running their own businesses, some ways they were making their own impact.
Do you feel like there should be more women advisors and boards, filled up with women?
That's a great question. And yes, of course, I feel like the from a business advisory point of view, there is a great value that a woman brings that is on top of her expertise, like her technical expertise, whether the woman is an accountant, or whether it's a leadership trainer, or whether we are talking about we were talking earlier about a physiotherapist, or whether it's a business strategist, because on top of that specific expertise, a woman brings that feminine energy, it brings that empathy, it brings that connection, and those are just added value to their technical expertise that they can contribute to a business.
Do you want to rest, or do you want me to keep going?
Yeah. Okay, Kane, what's your story regarding how did you
Do it quick.
So Kane, how did you get into advising?
So similarly, actually, to Alessia, I had a profound experience early on in my entrepreneurial career. I started my first business at around 20 years old, and it was in the entertainment industry. And we were failing at it. I had started it with a good friend, and we were very driven and motivated and talented, but of course those things don't always make the difference. What did make a difference was actually meeting an incredible advisor who worked with the two of us to turn around our failing little media business, to turn it into top 5 in the world in 4 years in the industry that we were in, which was in the video game industry. And so it immediately clicked for me how powerful and important advisors could be. It wasn't just about talent, drive, motivation. It wasn't just about a lot of planning or a lot of hard, working and late at night. It was actually about having somebody that could really help you think through things, connect the dots, maybe do some mentoring, maybe do some coaching, maybe do some consulting, and help add resources, ultimately having someone to work with. So I went on to have many advisors in many, many of my companies. And of course, I ran dozens of my own companies, and we did hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue in them. And at every company, I had boards of advisors. We had many different consultants and coaches working with us. And I just loved the idea of having great people around me. And we paid millions and millions of dollars to these advisors and these coaches. We gave away equity components and revenue shares to people that could help us make a big impact in our businesses. So, of course, I knew at some point between all the personal development work I was doing and all of the coaching that I was receiving and all the advising I was receiving, that I wanted to do the same thing. So when we launched our advisory company in my late 20s, not only did I start advising companies in mass and workshops and seminars and groups, but I was also doing a lot of private advisory work. And I remember the very, very first time I worked with a company owner, and I thought, first of all, can I really do this? Like, will I really make a difference? Am I going to know how to solve his problems and all the insecurities that I went through? And I remember this business owner saying to me within a couple months, oh my gosh, this has been the most profound experience. This is exactly what I needed. And I was like, what? He's like, I just needed to be able to think through, discuss things through, have people point out my blind spots. Just all this stuff that we've been doing together has been so profound. And the company grew massively. It ended up getting sold for a tremendous amount of money. And I just went, wow, like not only can I build my own companies, but I can really help other people. And I don't have to be full-time at their company like I do mine. I don't have to do late nights at their company. I can go in and make a difference in my area helping them. And that can be a huge impact for their company and for the world.